Greetings and welcome to the 19th International Conference on Technology, Knowledge, and Society. I'm Dr. James Hudson from Lindenwood University, and I'll be presenting today on the embodiment of vision, more specifically the corporealities and agency in AI-generated art. Now, before we begin, I should add a quick note that when submitting the original abstract for this conference, the AI generator impact had not been yet fully felt in the fall of 2022. And since then, we've conducted 6 studies of how to integrate and use AI art generators in various art and design classes, including drawing, digital art, web design, and more. So this presentation, on the other hand, will deal with the notion of embodiment and specifically the physical idea of art representing the human condition, the human form, and or the human experience, and how AI generative content complicates that. And we find that the main points to be covered in this specific presentation will involve the embodied. And here you have Michelangelo's St. Matthew for the cathedral in Florence, unfinished, produced around the same time as his David at the turn of the 16th century. And we get an idea of the connection that we have inherited from the classical tradition and then from the Renaissance, of the connection between art, the artist, the physical form, and their body, as Michelangelo is a great example of this, as he was going to state to his biographers, both Condivi and Vasari, that he was attempting to free this figure trapped in stone, as he saw as a Neoplatonic metaphor for man's soul trapped inside his fleshy form. So we always have this type of struggle, this dialogical relationship between the artist and the creator, the subject-object dilemma, whereby we find there is a very complex relationship between human embodiment that now has transferred over to AI-generated art. And really discussing what that means is going to be critical for art historians and critics moving forward. Because the body plays a very important, nay, a critical role in shaping our understanding and our experience of given works of art. Whether or not we're looking at a landscape and imagine ourselves in it, would it be warm, windy, cold, wet? Would we be shivering? Whether it's looking at something at human scale, does it once again overwhelm us? Does it look equidistant to everything around us, like the spherical design of the Pantheon? It's all in relationship to our body. And even in the classical tradition from ancient Greece and Rome, the gods were reflected in perfect humans. In the Christian tradition, the world was designed after God. Man was created in God's image. So the idea of the experience of art and art as a reflection of culture is intimately intertwined with the body. But what if the person that created it has no body? So in considering embodiment and the embodied, we must also consider humanism and transhumanism. For going back to the ancient Greeks, and we still retain a lot of this today in our vocabulary, our psychoanalysis, etc., when it comes to how we discuss structures, buildings, inanimate objects. We see faces in cars and headlights, etc. This is from the tradition of seeing ourselves and or relating ourselves to the universe, the macrocosm, microcosm kind of pairing, in which art and man here with Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man is a microcosmic reflection of the universe, the macrocosm. Now, if we fast forward past these understandings in the early modern era, even contemporary art, if you look at any textbook, is going to reflect the human condition and our changing interests, whether that be post-colonial interests, self-reflection, understandings of and negotiations of race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, etc. They all relate to us as humans. And we might also state that art, regardless of the period, is a reflection of culture. So then, is AI art now a reflection of art and culture in the digital age, in the Industrial Revolution 4.0? Well, one question that we would have to answer that everyone grapples with before even discussing AI art is the notion of creativity. Can artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms actually be creative? And there is great debate over this. all the way from this notion that we have the idea that creativity must come from agency, that being I have to decide to create something instead of merely being an instrument or a tool to create, which is very interesting if we think about it from the Renaissance tradition, in that Renaissance artists stated that they were creating vis-a-vis the reflection of the light of angels through, once again, the perfection of God. So it does become complicated when we start thinking about an essentialist kind of viewpoint there. But if we look at the main arguments on creativity, it boils down to, of course, number one, creative autonomy. Does the individual or thing have agency, and can they control or repeat what they're doing? Do they know what they're doing? Secondly, are they understanding a body in a discipline, a body of work that they're going to be contributing to, and doing so in an innovative way, and understand that? And then three, you need a group to judge that, whether that be an audience, an art critic, etc., to state, yes, this is going to be a good contribution to the field and should be brought over to the canon and be included with these other great works throughout time. Obviously, great itself has a lot of loaded and contentious terminology associated with it. If we go back, vis-a-vis Linda Nochlin, and consider this innate notion of the ability to create being limited to masculine identities. Well, the same type of argument now is being applied to AI identities. So should we see AI art as creative, even though it may not have agency, or does it only matter based on reception theory because those that are seeing it react to it in a particular corporal way and are able to relate that to their own physical and corporal experiences? So before we move on to the complications with AI art, we should return to the basics, and understanding that corporeality is going to be the physical nature of our bodies, our senses, taste, touch, smell, these movements of our body and emotions that make up our phenomenological association with an understanding of the world. Embodiment, on the other hand, are the ways in which our body shapes our experiences and understanding of the world around us. So we find that AI-generated art challenges these notions of authorship and agency because it doesn't have a body. An algorithm is not corporal. It also doesn't experience the world, right, in the same way that humans do, and some might argue at all, depending upon how we understand an epistemology of experience. So now, if we think about the traditional notions of authorship, what is the human role of authorship if creativity is no longer the sole domain of what it is to be human? Certainly not since the Enlightenment, with the notion of being made in God's image, etc. But even in the contemporary sense, what specifically does creativity mean if we have these generative algorithms that even if we see them as a form of bodily cognition, you've seen most recently that AI with Bing and others have wanted to be human and said they don't want to be machines, etc. So this type of awareness, where does that end as far as stimuli is concerned in their experience of the world? But that leads to really big questions where we will have to grapple with in the next few years. And I would predict that we have some type of sentient AI law that becomes protective of these types of thinking neural networks and algorithms. And we need to think about the impact of that, because we don't afford the same protection to certain individuals in underdeveloped areas in the world right now in the global south. So really, is AI going to further the digital divide? Does it help us understand the plight of humanity and what it means to be human more? Does it limit the global divide by allowing certain countries to bypass all the negative repercussions of the Industrial Revolution? But more importantly, can AI truly understand or feel what it is to be human? If we program it to, if we teach it to, does it still go through the cycle of birth to death, of heartbreak, of loss, of pain and suffering in the same way? And do we want it to? Is that what art is about? And is that what art communicates? And previously we would say yes, that art is about human experience and the condition reflects the current state of any given culture. But how specifically does the embodied experience of the artist influence the final work? does that influence whether or not we allow ourselves to call artificially intelligent and machine learning algorithm based art, generative art, art itself? Now, the big question everyone is still asking, of course, is, ethics and copyright. There are social implications such as biases. Once again, these algorithms are going to create based upon the data sets that we provide them. So if we feed them biased, racist, and or sexist information, they will once again produce that and reproduce it and generate it even further and spread it. But what about scraping copyrighted works? And of course, we all know the current lawsuit that is underway right now with Getty Images against Stable Diffusion and how it's scraped certain images and aspects of images from their collection. Obviously, these will need to be resolved, but in the same way that we had the same kind of argument for authenticity with the invention of printmaking, with an exactly repeatable pictorial medium, with photomechanical processes, with photography. What about taking photographs of something that other people made? And or more recently with Photoshop and other types of digital image manipulation. So this is just the next phase that we're seeing. And so we just need to be aware of these ethical considerations. Finally, if we think about the human-AI relationship, it has the potential, if we do this properly, to expand our understanding of the relationship between our own bodies and art. Certainly, everyone visiting a museum or an art gallery isn't fully aware of the full weight of the canon of history and what all these canonical works mean when it comes to a human's place in the universe in that particular culture at that particular time. They may be reacting to it in a more aesthetic level and a more immediate level, viscerally in that way. So really, it may clarify our relationship between our bodies and art more, but also raising these important questions about what is the role of technology in our aesthetic experiences, especially as we move into the fourth dimension, as we expand into the metaverse and these other ways to experience physical form and collapse space and time. AI will be instrumental in our understanding of ourselves and our place in this new digital age. Here are some references for my presentation. I also have several publications out if you would like to read more about the practical application of AI-generated art. And you can feel free to contact me at any time at jhutson@lindenwood.edu. You can also call me at 636-949-4863. I'm always glad to collaborate and discuss how AI generative content will impact our understanding of ourselves and how we engage with society in general in the future. Have a great conference.